thinking, but I can get a new one. So I think I'll give me a new one. Oh, no, it's down to watch. You can read it. Mine's like 27 years old. Give me the new one before the plane runs out.
Well, welcome everybody and good evening to the Raymore City Council work session for Monday, June the 16th, 2025. We have a couple of items on our agenda this evening. The first one being the discussion of the 2026 FIFA World Cup tournament. We're a year out from the very first match in Kansas City. I think it's scheduled for June 16th, isn't it? First match in
We're
KC.
359 days and 18 hours exactly right now.
I mean,
so-
from the beginning, but I think the first match is in Mexico City.
Yeah,
On June 11th, and then we have a match on June 16th. So we're a year away from the activities actually starting here. But anyway, turn it over to Mr. Fearborn.
thanks,
Go
sir.
ahead,
So tonight is just generally, we kind of wanted to get with the council and let you know that we are aware that it is 359 days and 18 hours until there is a match in Kansas City, and that there are a lot of discussions that are going on. We don't know much more than we know at this point, and there have been, oh my gosh, countless meetings at the Kansas City level, at the local level, conversations internally, but we just kind of wanted to have a discussion with the council about kind of two different areas, divided into two areas. One is what is the impact going to be to Raymore? Or what are the potential impacts to Raymore of Kansas City hosting these, the games? And then second part is, what is the council's temperature for us doing things associated with the games? And what's the division of responsibility that's going to go with that? So potential impacts that city staff has kind of discussed and have been discussed at other levels and with some other cities. So you have to believe that people who are going to be coming to the games, it is going to be an airport-centric deal. People aren't going to be driving to get to Raymore from overseas. So the center point's going to be the airport and all things downtown. Kansas City is hosting a number of events in conjunction with this. How many days, Mr. Murdoch, is FanFest open of the 30?
24 of the 39.
So the impact of Kansas City is a total of 39 days. FanFest is open for that. There are days when FanFest will be, they estimate will be the attended point. Overland Park has a number of events that are going to be scheduled for this. To part two of what we're going to talk about, what's the spillover from all of these major events that are going on that are actually being planned from Kansas City? What's the spillover where people would not have something to do? And we'll kind of get to that. The primary area that we would see as an impact on the city of Raymore doesn't actually hit Raymore. It is, are there going to be people needing housing that can't get housing closer to the games because Raymore's pretty far out. But we have a few Airbnbs, but people talk about the fact that maybe I could rent my house out for a month and go live someplace else and make more money even if I was staying in a hotel. And you see some of these cities that already have things in place where they don't allow short-term rentals. They are limited on signage. They're limited on other items, having discussions about possibly waiving those requirements for the World Cup. To that end, I'm going to ask Mr. Gress to address the three areas that staff has kind of thought about within that. Mr. Gress.
Thank you, sir. As Mr. Fearborn mentioned, we've kind of boiled it down into three areas of question or concern as we look at different topics or things that we might need to consider waiving as we learn more about the impact that people might be being in Raymore or businesses might be hosting events here in Raymore. So the first one, as Mr. Fearborn mentioned, is housing, and how do we address what that quote-unquote issue might look like. As Mr. Fearborn indicated, we probably have 7 to 10 Airbnb listings in the city, ranging from an entire house to just leasing out a room. I know there are other cities that have concerns about what existing rental properties will be kind of held back to rent out for a month or two during the World Cup to accommodate folks that can't find housing closer in, so they're going to drive a little bit further and find their way back into the event when they want to go there. Mr. Fearborn mentioned we don't have any regulations right now that regulate rentals, so there is nothing to waive at this time. I know we've had a couple discussions in the past about adopting some of those regulations, and we've talked to a couple of cities that have those in place, but as we mentioned, some cities are looking at waiving those entirely through the duration of the World Cup.
And as far as impact on the city relative to those sorts of rentals, one of the things we're probably going to have to have is a staff discussion. So somebody decides, or they have a vacant house down in Silver Lake, and they decide that they're going to rent that out and advertise that to rent that out during the World Cup. There could be neighbor concerns because all of a sudden you have a house that's being upkept. What are the maintenance requirements going to be in the middle of the summer when grass is growing? And what are the requirements? Are we going to put requirements on those relative to how many people could actually be renting that particular house out? The direction that staff is taking, because we do allow it, is more focused on it's allowed, but are there going to be some restrictions we need to think about as far as if you're renting it out, what are the property maintenance that's going to go with that, and are we going to have an occupancy limit on how many people can be on living in a house or renting a house in the middle of one of our neighborhoods. So that's been kind of the staff direction on this. And again, got a little bit of time, but we just wanted the council to be updated to where we are as far as those discussions are going right now. We're not going to let it catch us by surprise. Go ahead, Mr. President.
Thanks. The other two items are more related to our business community, if you will, and the first one deals with signage, in the sense that right now a commercial business can pull a permit for additional signage, temporary signage if they wish, if they have a fundraiser or an event going on over the weekend. So that's currently allowed. We anticipate, we talked about Johnny's or some of the other, a bar and grill that we have in town. If they're trying to get people into their business to have a watch party or something like that, they may want to put out a couple more signs or a bigger sign than what our code allows right now. They do have the ability to put a sign out. The question is, are businesses going to want to do something above and beyond what they typically would any other time of year? And so that would be something maybe looking at our code and perhaps discussing some waivers to some of those. Or perhaps we just want to stick with what we have right now because our code does allow for temporary signage as long as they get the permit and they're placed in the right spot. And then the last one, and we've seen these before in town with sporting events, would be kind of when you see the pop-up tents. People are selling jerseys or T-shirts or scarves, different sports memorabilia. We also allow those. There's a permit that you have to file, give some general information about where on the property it's going to be taking place, making sure it's not blocking any exits or entrances or things like that. We do ask for the owner's permission to set those up for the timeframes that they've asked to be on site. And then they also have to obtain a business license through the city clerk. And I was explaining just this afternoon, again, that's something we allow right now. I know the issue that we typically run into is that somebody will come in here on a Friday afternoon, gearing up to set up for the weekend, not recognizing that they have to have this list of items in order for the city to approve that. And so usually it ends up being the following weekend that they're able to get out and set up. And so that may end up being a discussion on what information we're going to be putting out to the community about, hey, if you're looking at selling shirts or jerseys or other items, here's the process, and make sure you have those items done ahead of time. We want to be supportive of that, but everybody else has to follow the rules for those when they put tents outside, and so we want to make sure that we're not that we're following those regulations if we do see those as part of the World Cup. So those are kind of the three areas. Again, a lot of the things we currently allow already. So it may be just a conversation about not so much waiving requirements, but how are we communicating what those requirements and permits and processes are throughout the World Cup.
I think it's also important, Dave, that Mr. Gress, he hit a good point with these shops that are coming in. Keep in mind that sites like that and/or stores that are selling apparel, there are some who follow the process to make sure that they have licensed apparel versus non-licensed apparel. And it's important to note that from our perspective, we can't go out and make sure that everything that somebody is selling, even if they went through the process to put the tent up, that it is licensed versus non-licensed. That's not a city function at that particular point. And so if you happen to get a call, right, that this tent is selling non-licensed apparel, that's not going to be a city issue at that particular point. If they went through the process to set the tent up appropriately and have permission from the owner, that's a separate track in terms of licensed versus non-licensed. And we've seen that obviously through Super Bowls and stuff like that, right? So that's not going to be something that necessarily you've never seen before, but I just want to make sure that if you ever got that question or something like that from a city function, it's the process of setting it up and following our codes and stuff like that to set it up versus the actual licensed apparel that FIFA would want to see or whoever else in terms of the licensed apparel for the actual tournament. So I just want to make that distinction as we get further into this particular process.
And it should also be noted, just from the standpoint of when we get to part two, FIFA is, their copyright rules and licensing rules are probably the strictest that you would see anywhere. It makes calling the Super Bowl the big game on anything seem very, very tepid. So one of the things that groups that are going to be marketing items, the chamber is having a lot of discussions about apparel and things that are going to go out there, very well aware of the fact that very, very strict licensing agreements. We would be subject to the exact same thing with any sort of event that we might be sponsoring. We got to be very, very careful, especially if there's any exchange of money that's going to go on relative to those. Did want to talk a little bit about, so depending on who you talk to, as I had indicated, we kind of feel like it's going to be the airport south, so we're going to be a long way away from the initial point of arrival for a lot of these, but people will be here. Maybe a housing issue, maybe not a housing issue as far as when you look metro-wide. We kind of feel like if there's anybody who's going to be camping relative to this, we need to be aware, but we also need to be aware of how far south we are. Kind of feel like in all of the discussions that have gone on, the furthest southern point that would be a logical point for that would actually be Longview Lake, because you're directly down Raytown Road from the stadium. Those people are all going to be walkers. We might get a little bit of spillover of that, but we're aware. But Longview Lake would seem to be the southern point for that sort of camping to go on. Got a nice big water source, outdoor bath available right there. So
It's not that far from the Rock Island Trail.
It's not that far from the Rock Island Trail either, which is another direct access to the ballpark.
I would think most of the, if you want to call Airbnb or short-term rentals for our area, would not be people coming in from other countries, but people here in the U.S., maybe they live in Springfield, or maybe they live in Iowa or Nebraska or whatever. I think those are the individuals that are going to not look for hotels and probably look more for staying someplace like Raymore. I don't think, in my mind, I don't see people that are flying in from other countries. Like I say, I think there'll be more from the airport to the city, but I could see a fair amount of people, from our bordering states that want to come and stay for, a week or so, that they would probably be looking.
The three major countries that we may be affected by will be those that stay at the base camps. The base camps have been established at Riverside,
Sporting KC, and KU. We'll know more toward the end of the year which 3 countries have chosen the Kansas City metropolitan area as their base camps, and they'll be here the entire period of 31 days based upon their winning record and so forth. But they bring, like Germany, I guess they probably bring 30 to 40,000 fans with them when they travel to another country for a big World Cup event. So but all 3 of those venues, as you know, aren't that close to us either. So there might be some. Joe, did you have some input on that?
Well, if you recall earlier this year when we had lunch with the, I've forgotten her name, but the director of the World Cup, Kansas City World Cup Committee, she mentioned that when they made the bid, they looked at the region as far as people coming in from Oklahoma City and St. Louis and Little Rock and Omaha, that they believe that there will be people in hotels that far out that'll come in for those game days that will impact us, whereas on the general every day of the whole
Well,
26 days.
To your point,
there'll be a lot of travel.
Lee
71.
Summit is preparing for, because they have their transportation hub, rail, and a fairly large airport, which was utilized quite a bit during the NFL draft. They saw a significant increase in air traffic at their airport. So they could potentially be looking for something either close to the train station in Lee Summit, so they can get back to St. Louis or Chicago or wherever they came in from, and the airport as well. So to your point, that is a possibility. That adds to your point that we're gonna have visitors from other regions coming here is what we kind of need to be prepared for. Yeah, yeah.
And an interesting just international departure that staff has even talked about, and I'm going to let Mr. Ryan address it.
Mr. Ryan, wow, thanks. I appreciate that. One of the things we have also talked about, to the mayor's point of who might be centralized in Kansas City in terms of being the hub, a nation that is assigned to Kansas City, is we've had the question already from people, what happens if that's a nation that is involved with the travel bans that are associated with the United States right now. And I think it's important to note that we do have a country that's already qualified for the World Cup that will be here, that is a part of the travel ban. That's Iran, that has already qualified. And I was telling Mr. Fearborn there are multiple countries who are still alive to qualify, and a couple who would actually have a pretty decent shot at qualifying. One of those is Venezuela. Another one is Haiti. Cuba is still capable of qualifying, and so is the Republic of the Congo. I don't think those will, but Congo actually is leading their group. I'm a soccer person, so they're leading their group to qualify. Venezuela certainly would have a shot, though they're right on the edge of what's called a playoff for the World Cup. So we'll have some of those. And I was telling Mr. Fearborn earlier that while we attempt as best we can to keep politics out of it, right, in terms of what we do as a city, we would be naive to not recognize the politics that go on at the local level in terms of the cities that are hosting it, right? In terms of you're talking your Bostons, Kansas City, San Francisco, Atlanta, all of those, the cities that are hosting it versus then the policies of the federal government and how those are in conflict at some point. And so we do need to at least kind of have that recognition that as people are coming into the area from some of these countries, that is a possibility to kind of be in conflict with one another in terms of what cities would want to allow versus what the federal government is going to want to allow. And so I do think that that's kind of an important thing just to have on the back of our mind as we go through this. So
as you can tell, we've got a lot on our radar with this. And interestingly enough, if we were to end up being one of the practice facilities for a country that had that, the travel ban will not be in place for the teams and their support group. And there's already action that has been taken that lawsuits that the support group includes fans for these teams. But if we were hosting one of those groups, lawsuit is unsuccessful, you end up with the team, but you don't end up with any of the fans associated with the team being allowed to come to the World Cup here. Any questions on that one? Kind of a strange deal. So that's kind of part one. We're aware There's going to be impacts. We just don't know the degree of the impact on the city. Part two is just kind of want to get council temperature for if you would be interested in us having during this some sort of a World Cup centric Saturday afternoon, one Saturday afternoon during the month, more than that, hosting possibly at the amphitheater some of the games as far as watch parties are concerned for the games. Some of that might be in a little bit of conflict with our local businesses. We've talked about that. If Johnny's is wanting to do, get better business and we're hosting something up at the amphitheater, that could be a little bit problematic. But just kind of would like to hear from the council on what your interest in us doing things are. Again, we've talked about doing watch parties at the amphitheater. What games would those center around? If we limit it to the United States, unfortunately, that would be a very few games more than likely. Just reality.
They are.
But they're not gonna go too far. Probably won't. They aren't going to. It's raging argument. But just kind of wondering what you all are thinking and leaving it wide open to you. Yeah, I mean, it's just a discussion for right now. We do know the chamber's planning events, but those are business centric.
One, I don't have any problem. I mean, I'm probably the only person here that's never seen a soccer game in person on TV, anything. I know literally nothing about soccer. But I think if we're going to host an event, I think we need to try to do it in cooperation with some of our businesses. And so even if we wanted like one Saturday, do something, maybe reach out to Johnny's and say, hey, would you guys like to be this, help sponsor this and put, some things in our other businesses. But I think that way it's not that we're competing with businesses, we're giving businesses an opportunity to showcase their business on that stage, and we're providing a venue for them, and at the same time it helps offset some of the cost. My second point is, again, I have no problem however big we want to do with World Cup, but this also during the same time period is a very important time period for our country. It's our sesquicentennial 250th anniversary, and I would really hope as a city that we're putting the same effort, more than just having a regular 4th of July fireworks, that we're going to put as much effort and energy into the sesquicentennial as we would this World Cup. That would be my comment.
Well, I do know so we've kind of engaged, the chamber has engaged the Parks Department, and we've made sure that Nate and Todd are in a room with Ryan, and we know you've seen the events scheduled for this year. We've got a magnet that says all the events that are happening this year. If we're gonna replicate many of those same events next year, then we build upon those to just exactly what you said, Brian, is that, if we're gonna do a fireworks event, or it's going to be a festival in a park, that they're gonna try to extend to a 3-day event, that maybe during that period, we also celebrate our country, but we make it enjoyable for anyone that wants to come visit and see what we have to offer. But I think bolstering our ability to host on any of our events that occur during that 31-day calendar event is going to be tantamount to be how much we're prepared for input. It could be their team's not playing, or their team's playing elsewhere, and the fans aren't going with that particular team. They're staying here in the area and waiting for them to come back so they can engage them at their home base. They've got to go somewhere. They've got to be somewhere. So what do we make our event attractive enough for those visitors to come here? And of course, we won't really know what kind of a theme we can put on until we know what 3 teams are going to be home-based here, And potential, because I mean, really, if you think about it, Sporting KC's not that far away. Lawrence isn't that far away. I mean, Riverside, those teams will travel quite a bit, really. Or their fans will. Because we've been, Raytown, my old hometown, where they're at ground zero at the ballpark there. They really got to be prepared for the unexpected there. So, but like you said, we're 20 miles away from the airport or from the stadium. There is an opportunity for us to kind of promote ourselves, but just don't know what it's going to look like with our event planning. Did you have something, Sonia?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's something that's happening and a lot of people are excited about it. It makes sense to take advantage of that, to center lots of things around it. I mean, everything from our kids' parks and rec events to make them soccer themed for a while. I think, take advantage of what people are excited about.
Sure.
And as far as competing with businesses, I don't think that's a concern. We have concerts in the park and they have bands at businesses as well. So I don't think I would avoid doing something because Johnny's is also having a watch party. There are lots of people in Raymore, and hopefully we're pulling people from outside of Raymore to come as well. We have lots of space at the amphitheater, and I don't think it would be significant enough that we would really be battling that much for people. People are going to choose indoors or outdoors, whether they, want to be there. So, yes, take advantage, I say.
You have something, Jay?
I was just curious if the Parks Board or Parks staff has had any discussion about this and if we have any input back from them yet.
Go ahead.
To start on the first part of that, yes, there has been some discussion, though an official event calendar or an event hasn't been put before the park board as of this time. Mr. Mustine and I have gone through to do a preliminary assessment of the staffing requirements that it would have for the amphitheater, the costs kind of associated with hosting an event, including the equipment, the staff, the security that would be necessary, access to and from the amphitheater. So we have gone through that so far to kind of know what we could accomplish by using that particular system. So we have gotten that far, but an official proposal hasn't gone before the park board.
Yeah, Don?
I was talking to Mr. Fairborn about this last week. I do think not really being exposed to FIFA soccer, like Mr. Mills, I have watched part of it. It's a very high-end event, very expensive. Like, tickets are not $50. I mean, they're like $1,500, and I think people who fly from other countries, you have to have money to do this. You can't come in. It's not from that standpoint. But my conversation with Mr. Fairborn was more, if we do something, keeping our citizens in mind. Because going to Johnny's, I mean, I think there's people that would rather go there and, have a drink and sit inside and watch TV. But then I do think we have citizens that would like to say, hey, Raymore is putting this on. It's a free event at our amphitheater. We have, whatever set up. As long as we can concur the cost and we get that in the budget for next year for our parks, I think it's something to really give back to our city, and that's a good focus that, it is a probably once in a lifetime event for Kansas City, at least in our lifetimes that we see this here. But, I agree with Mr. Mills too, that the 250th birthday, after watching the parade Saturday night, as patriotic as that was, I remember in '76, the bicentennial where I lived at in the middle of Kansas, and it was like all month it seemed like something was going on with that event, and leading up to it, it was a big thing. So hopefully we focus in on that too, or tag team it somehow, and think of our citizens as far as they're the ones, what can we provide them for an opportunity and a really a memorable event for them to share with their families and all that. And I think seeing the amphitheater, I mean, Friday night it was packed, and
Yeah.
it was probably the biggest
It was a great
crowd. Definitely the need for the overflow parking now. I think people were, when I had my drone up, they were overflowing on the old street. And the parking lots were full, but it definitely was an event that was crowded. I mean, biggest event I've seen out there in my time going to them. So I definitely think we have a ton of potential out there to host something and, really wrap it around the amphitheater, and, whether or not we have, playground bouncy things for kids or miniature soccer fields or whatever out there. I think it'd be a huge opportunity for us to draw people into Raymore and show off our city at that point in that event and our amphitheater, so.
Yeah. Oh, Kevin?
Yeah, kind of piggyback on the last three comments on one of the visions we had for that amphitheater is having our businesses kind of embrace it. And so what about the thought of, instead of Raymore paying for it, that we partnership with, say, there's gonna be many nights, I guess, and I'm not a soccer fan, my son-in-law is, so I've been forced to watch it. But I guess these are gonna be on for many nights, but have we had conversation, or will we have conversations with our local businesses, give them an opportunity? I'm sure they're thinking about ways, how can we kind of grab this tiger by the tail and make some money with it. But, one of our goals when we put those things in is to have some people come in and sponsor some events. That's just food for thought, so.
Tom?
I'm tagging on that too, but I think with the amphitheater, if we want to set up things like we do big golf tournaments, they can bring in a 10 by 10 food trucks or sell their product, sponsor it, sell their products down here while they're doing it and double hit it. I think like Johnny's, and that'd be a good thing. I think they'd be all for it and help us sponsor it, sell their food down there while we have it on a big screen or something. I think we can hit both sides with that as a city and help the business at the same time.
Where the staff discussion had gone is to just that. If we get out in front of it early enough with the events that we're gonna have and we partner with them, city can't make money off of it, but if we're hosting an event that they can tag on to and make money off of, I think that would be a very, very good partnership. We'd wanna make sure that we're creating the centerpiece, but then working with the chamber to coordinate the businesses. We would go so far as food trucks are concerned. For a lot of these events, it's kind of interesting. We're hearing loud and clear that the food trucks are gonna be in demand. So there may actually be a cost to get them to want to come to Raymore to do those, just because of so many events going on, that we may have to be talking with you all within the budget about what do we see as a cost for something like that, where we usually don't have it. I mean, they want to be here for an event, but they don't have anything else scheduled, so maybe a little change in the focus of our thinking on that.
Joe?
One of the things to think about here is, with sports, you're like, oh, well, if my team makes it to the Super Bowl, then all of a sudden, a lot of guys, a lot of women as well, in their early 20s, where they don't have children, are going to jump on something like this. Same thing, you're going to get another group of people where their kids are out of their house, and they're going to be able to, they've waited all this time to be able to do something like this. So there's going to be a lot of people that make decisions at the last minute to do things, and it's going to be really hard to predict what's going to happen with so many people making decisions. Sometimes the last minute. I know some boys from Raymore, well, they're men now, but from Raymore, that Coach Burke, I went to Brazil. I had nowhere to sleep. I got a plane, and I just rode around with people that I could barely talk to. It was the greatest thing I've ever done. And there are going to be a lot of people that will jump on an opportunity like that. So it's going to be important that we just stay flexible
The
and nimble.
unpredictability is
Yeah,
kind of
I
scary.
mean, I didn't know
agree.
where I might be in July next year myself.
I've described
what
it
day?
to the mayor and to staff as we have to be proactively reactive in a situation like this. And to that end, council member, not only with people jumping on a plane at the last minute and showing up with a sleeping bag on their back, but for a lot of business-minded individuals, pop-ups, things like that. Hey, this is going to be a great opportunity. I've never had a food truck before, so I'm going to make one now and sell my great barbecue. So we're going to have to be flexible to things like that as well.
Yeah, Tom?
again, on that, yeah, we gotta be flexible and we gotta take care of our businesses, the ones here first of all, before new guys just pop up for a try for a month and fail, but we get our regular businesses in there first. And like I said, when we talked back about the 3rd, 4th, and 5th of July next year being on a weekend, and for the 250th birthday, what we can do and magnify that here at the park and do it all in there on a Friday the 3rd. Have so much going. You got soccer fields out there. There's so many activities we can do at the park for that 3-day weekend. It'd be big to bring stuff out there, and it'll draw a lot of people who are going to be in the areas anyway. So when you have the amphitheater going, you have that for that big weekend, it will just draw a lot, and people from all over will come to that, even from around us close, because something that big, they'll come and sit and pay money and see that. So something we need to worry about before we get into next year's calendar. Yeah.
Anybody else? Comments? Anything else on that?
Thank you all very much.
Okay. Excellent. Next item is discussion of the impacts of the passage of Missouri Special Session Senate Bill 3. We touched on it a little bit at the council meeting the other night, but now that it has passed, Mr. Fearborn has additional information for us here.
So this is straight from MML. It did pass, SB 3 did pass last Wednesday, passed the House. So the main direction is, as you see on the top there, by no later than next April, the county will have to put it on the ballot. One of the things, as we think just broadly about this, the county does have the ability, although the presiding commissioner is always very, very tepid about these things. He's very cautious. But the county could put this on the general election in November, in which case, if it passes constitutional muster, which we'll get into, it would actually be impacting our tax bills that are due December 31st. They could put it on the ballot that way. And so this is much more immediate than we would think. You can see in the summary sheet that is on here how it would apply. I'll get into that here in just a second. But we are so within this, as the mayor had indicated last Monday night, there are 3 classifications of county. There are counties that are completely exempt from it, so the formula that is in place right now is still how it applies to them, which is what the public entities within there, the political subdivisions within there, it is either the lower of what is impacting each taxpayer, it's the lower of the assessed valuation increase, the CPI, or 5%. So what you see on here for 5% counties is kind of the reverse of that. What the credit is the higher of 5% or the CPI. So it goes this way for those counties. So there are 17 counties that are completely exempt from this. The old formula applies. There are 75 counties that it is the 5% or the CPI, whichever is higher, is what the credit they're eligible for. And then there are 22 counties, including Cass County, that it is 0 increase over the base year, which means that our base year would be 2024. So what they would be putting on the ballot for the voters to decide is, do you want this tax freeze, this tax credit, to go into effect for everyone, all residential properties, which includes apartment complexes? Does that go into effect for either next December's tax bill, or if it's on for November, this December's tax bill would be the impact of that. Any questions on that so far? So the impacts, we've done some pretty extensive work on this one. If it were to go into effect in November, so it freezes the tax liability, and the real property tax liability, which is the official term that they use, which is an official term, is in essence the dollar amount that someone is paying based on the formula, which is the assessed valuation of the home, which is the market value times 0.19. So the assessed valuation of the home divided by 100 times whatever the levy is. That is the real property tax liability. The real property tax liability is a property. It's not an individual, which is interesting because it was actually on the senior tax credit. One of the items that left the senior tax credit, which is already in place, left that open to a potential lawsuit in the future, had this not come into play, because it applies to an individual, somebody who is of a certain age rather than the property itself. So that was a little bit of a flaw in the way the original law was written. Just kind of a side note. Financially, what does it mean for us? So the assumptions that we used were, because it is a freeze on the dollar amount that is in place, we held the levy the same moving forward, and we held the total assessed value the same within that formula. And the impact when you take, and it goes back to 2024, obviously, this is a year where the assessments would go up, so that would not be in place, so we can start this year. The differences for the next 2 years would be $717,329 total. The breakdown on that would be $232,993 not collected in the general fund, $62,688 not collected in the park fund, and this is an interesting one, in the debt service fund, $421,329. Those change every 2 years when the new assessment comes in place. It gets bigger every year, obviously, because they're frozen down here. What it says in there, in the law, as it has been passed, just like the senior tax credit, the assessed valuation continues to go up. And the term that they use is for purposes of computing how much is owed, everything's still in place for the city. In the macro, if you have a $300,000 home, and that's the only home in the city, and the assessed valuation on it goes up, and the amount that would normally be paid on that based on that goes up, it is as if the city still collected that. Does that make sense? Even though we're not, because it's a credit against, it's not a redetermination of the amount that's actually owed. So if everything's in place, what your tax bill is going to show is, here's the amount you owe, here is the credit you against the amount you owe. So the total assessed valuation of the city continues to go up. Well, as you all know, within the formula from the state auditor's office, the assessed valuation continues to go up in the city, but we're not collecting that amount, but it's as if we were. So eventually, that higher assessed valuation, my water balance test that I always talk about, that assessed valuation is going to force the levy to go down. When that happens and you're paying a lower amount, the new lower amount becomes your base year. So over time, what you're actually paying doesn't just freeze, it will actually go down in what we're collecting. This changes if you sell your home, and I'm sure at the county level, they've got a little bit of a headache right now because if you do an improvement to your home, the improvement is assessed at the new level and the home's still back here. I'd have no idea how that's going to work, especially if the improvement is inside your home. All of a sudden, you're going to have marble halls, and you're not going to be assessed for those because they don't go into your home, obviously. Everything's going to be on the outside. But you get a new deck, you get a new pool, they can see that. That portion is going to go up against this lower portion down here, and they don't talk about, okay, does that assessment then, is that allowed to continue to increase on the improvement, or is that frozen in time down here? In total, over a 10-year period, the total amount, the total impact to the city will be $17,160,419, and that is a conservatively high number, only in that we cannot predict what's going to happen with home sales.
Or the CPI, correct? Because that's kind of what we're using for formulating.
Well, except for we're frozen in time.
Exactly.
So it does, the CPI, if,
That's how you based your figures off of.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
The, some notes on this. Obviously, we've had some discussions with the school district. We are 14.0 of the tax bills that go out, the city's tax bill on real property, the city is 14.06% of that property tax bill. The school district is 57.97% of that tax bill. According to the superintendent, who's had a lot of discussions, Raymore Peculiar would survive, Belton would survive because they're big enough. Most of the other cities in the county are going to have to consolidate if it goes into place, and that's their early conversation. Obviously, a little bit, he used the term devastating on their part.
He actually told me Friday their 10-year estimate is about $200 million effect.
Yeah, he actually called me, left a message that it was up from his initial estimate. They had run the new, there are a number of things, so the House is set to convene if they get a special session.
It would be the last week of August if it's granted.
Would probably be granted because they know that there are a lot of mistakes that maybe can get corrected before this thing gets to the courts. The initial one that makes it unconstitutional at first pass is they've got 3 different levels of counties here. And so there's 3 classifications within that. Can't do that. They may try to fix that. If they do a fix, you would probably see it being eliminating the exempt and eliminating the zeros and going with the 5%. Still painful, but not as painful for us. Just kind of looking down my notes here.
Could you speak to the debt service and what it would do to our rating?
Thank you, sir. So the debt service portion of this is really problematic because it's a requirement that we pay on our bonds, and it's obviously the largest hit of the $717,000 in the first year. We wouldn't be collecting $421,000. For some entities, and we're calculating now, there is a point where they're upside down and can't make their bond payments. If you can't make your bond payment because it's not subject to Hancock, you are required by law to, without going to anyone, you're required by law to raise the levy. Now, right now, we roll the levy back every year, so we've got a little push room in there. But it could mean that our 7170 goes up. We wouldn't be at our max that's been allowed, but it may have to go up to make future payments with this kind of a loss. That loss actually runs to, in the debt service fund, in 2035, that loss actually runs to over $2 million in the debt service fund. Problem in the immediate is, because of the loss in the revenue that's being collected in there, even at the 5%, right now, at the 0% right now, we estimate that to go for a no tax increase bond issue for the Justice Center is going to be pushed out till at least 2032. Kind of working on trying to trim that down right now. Now, remember, that's a no tax increase bond issue. We still have capacity in there that we could be asking for, but we'd still have to go out on the ballot. Anything you'd like
That
me
was
to
the
address on
biggest
debt
issue,
service?
yeah, that was the
Okay.
biggest issue.
So the first issue, as far as one of the things kind of talking it through, because the presiding commissioner and the commissioner are pretty tepid on these things, if I were advising them, I would be advising them, I would at least put this out until, depending on what happens, if there is a special session, I'd be advising them to put this out until the April ballot. So that if there is, after the governor signs it, that then, or whatever he's gonna sign, we have time to see what kind of lawsuits are gonna be filed, what we're gonna be up against when this goes on the ballot. Part of the problem, though, with that is there's already a law in place, which, by the way, if this passes and if there's some form of it in there, that if you are already taking it, you cannot take both the senior tax credit and this. And that's actually written into it. The other item that's in here, that the people who did not want the stadium portion to pass, you all have severability clauses. If something's declared unconstitutional, the rest of it's still in place. In this case, it is a severable. You could take this out and the rest of the bill is still in. Part 2 of the bill was disaster tax relief. They put this in, another political statement tonight. We usually don't make them, but everybody admits to it. The reason they did this was to buy votes. The governor, this originally was on just to talk about the stadiums. Late night 2 Wednesdays ago, governor realized he didn't have the votes for the stadiums, so he expanded the agenda to allow for discussion within the bill of disaster relief to buy St. Louis County votes or St. Louis area votes, and this to get Freedom Caucus votes. And he got the votes he needed in the Senate, subsequently went to the House. A lot of the discussion in the House on this particular item was for the people who did not like what ended up coming to them from the Senate, they tried to actually get the severability clause struck so that when this was found to be unconstitutional, the whole thing would be gone and they could go back to the drawing boards on everything. That did not get enough traction to get added as an amendment in the House, and so here we are talking about this tonight. If there are no changes, and there certainly won't be any changes before I'm meeting with you all the 3rd week of August to talk about the budget, I will actually be giving you all 2 budgets, 2 preliminary budgets. One will be with this impact in place, and it will be in place for next year because I have to plan on that, even if it doesn't go in until the following year, nudging into it, but you're gonna be seeing from me the entire impact of this on our budget. The effect being We got to cut 232,000 out of the general fund, and we got to cut 62,600 out of the park fund. You'll also see the budget assuming the strong likelihood of this being struck down in some manner in the courts. I still haven't figured out the whole 5% thing. If the House rolls that over and it becomes a morph of, before it even has time to go to the courts. And so they recreate the law in there.
Did you mention Moody's rating?
So we spoke with Mr. Goffey about that. The Moody's rating, if this goes through everybody's Moody's rating in Missouri is going to go down. It has to. The more defaults on debt service that are in place down the line, that's going to impact all of us. I could see a 2-point hit. So all the way back to a single letter.
Mr. Burke?
Is there any inadvertent, I know this won't apply to us, but on cities that are contracting instead of growing like we are, does it kind of give them a little bit of a window before their taxes drop, or is it just
Nope,
hits them the same as us?
nope. The law is the law.
All right.
They got to put it on the
As
ballot.
far as the 2-year reassessment window, in a way, it wouldn't?
No. Because it's the freeze. And remember, I always talk to you about, I way overuse it, the water balance test. So cities where their assessed valuation actually going down, they can raise their levy. But in this case, it's not going to matter because all their property's frozen at 2024.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I had a couple questions. The 62 tax freeze does that credit because when the property sells, the base rate changes. Is this done for the other one? Is it the same way?
The exact same way, sir. Again, the only thing in here that this does not account for in conservatism is if a property sells, it establishes the selling point as the new rate, and we have no idea how to calculate that. Interestingly enough, you do kind of have to wonder as you're ruminating on it, will it make people hunker down and stay in place, and what's the impact going to be on the housing market? Because if I'm in a $350,000 home and I'm paying taxes down here and I got to buy a new house, my taxes could skyrocket, especially if I'm moving up.
That goes without saying. Sure, it'll do that. I mean, absolutely. The next question I have is, does this eliminate, for the counties that are frozen, does it eliminate the Hancock?
No, sir. Everything about the way we have to calculate.
So it's like a double-edged sword.
It's as if, thank you for that setup, as a matter of fact. I had forgotten that one. So the double whammy on us is going to be, because it's still going up as if it was just normal, and the credits in place down here that we're not collecting on, that going up means our levy will go down eventually. That's just a given. So we get hit both ways. The credits out there that we're not collecting on, and the levies going down over here, that even on like a new home where it goes up, we're still having to force the levy down. In the Hancocks, interestingly enough, usually I go, the Hancock Amendment funds we get hurt on those artificially by that sort of thing, by the calculation that's in place. In this case, though, the impact on the debt service fund is just as harmful to us, and maybe more in the long run.
Brian, did you have something you wanted? No? Okay. Mr. Baker?
As far as the vote goes, what would the people be voting on to approve this, or?
Straight approval.
And then I mean, I guess, I mean, everyone's seen the reassessment notices. I mean, we're all between 11 and 14% in town for that. How's that gonna impact that? Because I know I've had a lot of conversation about houses not going up 11 to 14%, but they're being assessed higher, thus having a higher tax bill due in December. I mean, timing probably couldn't be worse on this, that you're gonna get the fever of the people going, we pay too much, why would I want an increase? Or not increase, however that wording is on there, but.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it would be, will the credit go into place? And I think even if it was 2%, when you start talking about, because the phrase, and I'm sure they'll use it on the ballot language, the phrase will be tax relief. And people see tax relief, and it's just the opposite of when they see tax increase. Other point, we have to be very, when it goes on the ballot, and it's not an if it goes on the ballot right now, it's a when, we have to be incredibly cautious. Alls we can do is information. We can't be for, we can't be against.
Anybody else? Anything else on that?
The impact, just a few numbers. The impact on the general fund will be 13%. It will impact 13% of the revenue. The revenue won't go down 13%, but the general, the real property tax, because it doesn't apply to personal, doesn't apply to commercial, but the hard dollar is $1,513,000 of an $11,574,000 revenue budget. That doesn't include transfers. So 13% in the general fund, 29% in the park fund, and again, 74% of the debt service fund will be impacted by it.
That's Brian?
My only question is, when you're calculating these figures, are you also calculating the growth? Because as we have more homes built, we're generating more property tax. So is that coming off of that number? Or are we just calculating numbers based on being, we're not seeing any true growth in our property tax revenue, that's just a flat line?
This is freezing the numbers in 2024, so no growth included in that.
So I mean, with growth, it wouldn't be quite as horrendous impact. And so, I mean, I just think, we gotta, like I say, my father-in-law always said, numbers lie, liars use numbers, he'd always, when I throw things out. But I think it would probably also, as we get down to actually looking at the budget, I think we have to also look at.
Oh, we will
growth.
absolutely include the growth, as we'll include the commercial, and we'll include, I mean, again, the numbers I've given tonight are just true numbers. Yeah, within the real estate only, we're gonna lose 717,000.
Yep, Kevin.
To Mr. Merrill's point, if it does go into effect, that would mean any development, I'm not saying any development, but development would be critical to our city.
All development is critical to our city, yes, sir. I cannot, so there are books written on this about what, shifting the tax burden. And if we are going to maintain our services, and internally we sit here all the time, and you all know, I give you a lean budget. I give you a balanced budget every year. People out there are always going to argue there's fat. I argue, come and show me. Come and show me. And we've had a lot of people try to find that. You can name some of them, I'm sure, all of you. if we are going to maintain those services, we are going to have, you automatically have to entertain what is the shifting of the tax burden. What proactively can we do to get businesses in here? And what are we willing to give up if we have to shift that tax burden? One of the humorous parts about all of this is because apartments are considered residential, you'll remember they had to lock in an automatic increase every year to their assessed valuation, which they're locked in because that's separate and apart from everything else that we're doing here. So they're actually 2% increases every single year while everybody else is going to be frozen. So that's good news, at least on that front. Some of the conversation that's out there is, if the House gets their special session, and they most likely will we see relief from that? Or will they, because the two amendments that were in, when they were talking about it the first time, I was not all that amused with. They didn't help us a whole lot, and one of them actually hurt us. So kind of got to do a wait and see on the relief that we'll get from that. I do think if it goes to the courts, it will not be upheld. They'll have to strike it on a number of issues.
Yeah. I think that's what the school districts are depending on, to be honest with you. All right, anybody else have anything?
Other.
Well, I know we have other. We always have other. So that would conclude item B, I would say then, or is there anything under other?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Terrible tragedy up in Minnesota over the weekend. Wanted to know, so anybody out in the world can sunshine law any one of you all's submittal packet for being a council member and find out all of your information that's required. They can sunshine law it. We go the extra step of publishing your addresses and your phone numbers. A lot of places, most places you go to, if I want to email a council member in ABC city, I don't even get their email address. I get a form that I'm filling out and it pushes it into their email box, but I don't even see their email address. In light of the current political environment, I just kind of wanted to ask the council, would you like us to remove that information from the website? Again, people can still get it, but we give it to them right now, and we give them the full meal deal. We give them your email address, your home address, and a phone number to get in touch with you. Just want to get the council members' flavor on that.
Don, do you have something?
If someone does a sunshine request, are we given the opportunity to know who sunshined our information?
Yes.
And would that be offered to us if that ever came up?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you would notify me that, hey, someone sunshined, I mean, how would we know to ask back if we didn't know it was asked the first time?
I'll override that. You're just saying
I'm just
we
saying I
don't
don't
have
believe
anything
we've
in
got a
place.
policy in place
We
that
would
would say-
absolutely notify you.
Mr. Burke?
The other maybe realized situation here is there's also the ability for all of those volunteers, whether they get on a board or not, all of their information is on there as well.
That in part is what is leading to this conversation. We have now had that, sir.
Anybody want to leave it on? Take it off? Minimize it?
I mean, it's so easy, go on the county website and look somebody up. I mean, it takes like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So
Good point.
know if your taxes are paid, know what you're paying for, and the whole thing, so not just your address.
Sure. Mr. Burke?
What about just removing phone numbers? We have email, you can email people 24/7, whereas the phone is, especially with people not having a home, a landline, it's a little more of a personal situation. I don't think it would impact me, but it might impact people.
Yeah. Sir, Mr. Holm?
From a security standpoint, the one I would be more concerned with is physical address. Still can be looked up if you know what you're doing. Doesn't take too much to find it, but we do publish it directly on the website. You can send me a nasty email, you can call me and threaten me, but if you got my address, you can drive right to it. Granted, I think most people could probably find it with a little digging, but if we make it easier for them, I think that it just speeds up the process.
And that was just kind of my point. We do make it very easy for them because it's one click on the website.
I would be in favor, at a minimum, of removing our physical addresses off of the website.
Circo?
I confer with that. Yeah, they can call us, they can email us, but ding dong on my door, I open the door not knowing it, someone's there with a bad attitude like we're talking about. I wouldn't know they're there and why they're there. They would know because they know right how to walk up to your front door, and we wouldn't know that. That might be a good idea.
Anybody else have any thoughts about it? Anybody against it? It's been mentioned by 2 council members now.
City gives me security all the time anyway. I have police sitting across from my house most of the day,
Well, if no one's opposed to it, we can make that modification fairly easy on the site.
We'll make it so, sir.
Okay.
Get rid of one call.
Yep. Just, all right, anything else under other? Okay. All right, anybody else have anything? If not, have a good evening. We're adjourned.